Have you ever launched a new process only to realize patients weren't experiencing it the way you imagined? Well, Jim McMahon from the University of Maryland Medical Center and Steve Koch from Cast Hue wanted to avoid that exact scenario, so they used patient journey mapping. And in this interview, Jim and Steve will share how journey mapping helped them identify friction points and incorporate patient input to improve hospital operations. Oh, and through their mapping exercise, they discovered the surprising thing that patients appreciated the most about receiving care from an academic medical center. And hint, it's not the long list of clinician credentials. Let's get to it.
Sway help.
Steve, Jim, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Colin. Great to be here.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Colin. Appreciate the opportunity.
Steve, why don't we start with you? Steve, can you just introduce yourself for our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Steve Koch. I'm managing partner at Cast Hue, and we're an experience design consultancy, and we use human-centered design to better understand the journeys that patients take within healthcare, and then work with those patients to co-design new experiences that better fit their needs.
Jim, how about yourself?
Jim McMahon, Vice President of Marketing Communications at the University of Maryland Medical Center, which is one of the member hospitals of the University of Maryland Medical System.
And Jim, I understand you and Steve have worked together over a number of different organizations and have done the patient journey mapping together for a while now. Is that right?
Yes, that's true. Steve and I first started working together when I was with MedStar Health as the AVP of Brand Experience. We did 2 journey mapping projects, which is sort of undersells the scope of work for these projects. But in any case, we did journey mapping for urgent care as well as for our emergency departments. And then in my current role, working with cancer leadership, we were identifying really opportunities for how we can grow our cancer volumes in 3 specific disease sites. And what I suggested is that if we really want to do that, I'm a firm believer in the experience defines our brand and people's perceptions of our brand. So my thought was we should really think about not just the operational piece of cancer care, but what that experience really looks like. And that's when I brought Steve along for this project with the medical center.
Now, normally I would start this kind of interview by asking Steve or you to define what a patient journey map really is and walk me through that. But I want to get right to the punchline so that people understand the value of it. So, Steve, Jim, both of you, can you chime in on what are patient journey maps able to do for an organization? Like, what's sort of the outcomes that can result from having a good patient journey map?
I think the important thing about journey maps is that you get a lot of what's in healthcare. We have our CAP surveys, we have NPS scores, we have reviews, we get a lot of directional information. But what journey mapping does is qualitatively understand that journey from the patient's perspective and really looking deep at every touch point, what they're thinking, feeling, and doing. So we can start to understand really from the patient's perspective, not only what the friction points are, but why those are friction points. And then vice versa, understand what areas of the journey work really well and maybe differentiators for an organization so we can build on those and scale those. And so from a very high level, I think that's where journey mapping brings a lot of value to an organization, helps us know where to focus and how we can become better. But then Jim has his perspective as the person leading the effort on the organization's end.
Yeah, so for me, Steve mentioned the idea that we have some survey methodologies in healthcare that give us some insights about how we deliver what a specific moment in time in that experience is, whether it's the nurse communication with the patient, etc. But this journey mapping is really that rich understanding of what it's like to do business with us. What people are feeling and what they're thinking about and how well we're doing at all of these different stages throughout that journey. And that insight is invaluable. We in healthcare, there has been this consumerism trend for some time, and I'm probably preaching to the choir on that. But when you really think about it, I don't know if we do enough. Like while that that idea of consumerism has gained a lot of momentum over time, this to me is really the pinnacle of understanding your consumer, understanding your patient. Um, what moves them, what makes them happy, what makes them feel confident, what makes them feel cared for, all comes through in this work, and I think it's completely invaluable for anybody who really who provides a service to a customer, who has customers. You really should be exploring this as an opportunity to really enhance your operation and really deliver for your customers.
I'm sort of picking up on a couple of things here, and I hope both of you can validate it for me. But it sounds like one of the things that a patient journey map allows you to do is really be more pinpoint in terms of deploying your resources, right? Once your map is done, you really know where A, you need to maybe improve, but B, also where it'll actually make a difference with the patients that you're serving. And on the other hand, Jim, I heard you're saying that it really helps you truly understand your patients so that maybe you could develop whole new ways of engaging with them and working with them and so forth. Did I get some of that right?
100%, 100%. I think that healthcare is very process driven, and obviously, that makes sense. There's a treatment plan for every disease, and you have to go through these protocols of identifying what your issue is. But but that feels in some ways, I hate to say this, but speaking of my industry, but it feels very methodical. There's like this committed process that you have to adhere to, and sometimes that takes away some of the humanity of what we're actually doing. And this is a way of really trying to bring that back into care delivery.
To build on that, I would say that by really hearing from the people, you get a different perspective. Whether it's, and we look at journey mapping in a lot of different ways. Sometimes we'll do journey mapping in person with a bunch of patients, but then we'll also bring in providers and care teams, and everybody gets to hear directly from the patient. And other times we'll do in-depth interviews virtually with people, but then we'll record them and we'll share those verbatims and really the patient's voice. I always say it's much more impactful to hear from the patient than it is from Steve. So let's make sure we're doing everything we can to get that perspective, because we think of it a different way than we do from a spreadsheet or a survey result. We can really zero in on what those challenges are, to your point, Colin, pinpoint the problem, and then really get everybody together to collaborate and figure out how we can fix it, how we can design a better experience.
I was just going to add to Steve's point because I think it's a fantastic point. And in every single journey mapping session, whether it's a report out with leadership or their involvement in the fact finding, right? Whether it's the group settings or listening to recorded videos, as I was saying before, that construct of that relationship between the patient and the provider is really focused on how do you fix the issue, right? What are you feeling? Tell me your symptoms. Here's what the treatment plan can look like, right? So it's I don't want to say it's transactional, but there's a script essentially that's followed, and that script and the nature of that engagement is really limited to how much you can understand what that patient is going through. So providers and really hospital or healthcare administrators, whoever is involved in it, when they get an opportunity to take a step back and see the patient for who they are as a person, because that comes through loud and clear in these interviews, either whether it's group setting or one-on-ones. When they take a step back and they hear how the experience we're providing impacts that person, it's incredibly moving, incredibly moving. And I haven't had one journey mapping project that hasn't had that result with leadership in my organizations.
So just so I'm clear, you're talking to, as part of this journey mapping process, this is not just internal people drawing out a map on a whiteboard. I mean, you're talking about interviews, you're talking about group interviews with actual patients to get their feedback to then drive the changes and the operations that you were mentioning before, Jim. Is that right?
100%, 100%. It's looking at everything. And what we do, well, Steve, you can speak, eloquently to the process, but it does give you the ability to say, what was the catalyst that made you choose this service? Or what, you can define these beginning and end points, however makes sense for whatever it is, whatever journey you're trying to create or document. Um, but yeah, it's all aspects of it. It's what was the digital experience like when you went on a website, when you made that first phone call to set your appointment, what was that like? When you arrived, what did the facility look like? How did the people interact with you? Not just the provider, but the front desk person, the person who checked you out. Um, all of those things. It really touches on really all of the people that they interact with, the environment that they went through in receiving the care, and the complete process.
Yeah, and I would add to that, just to your point, Colin, that probably one of the biggest stumbling blocks I hear about around journey mapping is the idea of not including patients. And it can be more efficient to not include patients, but you're giving up a lot. And I've talked to folks who say, I'm a patient, our staff members are patients, we can go through the journey. But the reality is that A, you want to know what's going on in the journey today. And so that's why we always want to talk about patients who've received care recently. But B, when you're an employee of a healthcare organization, you know how it's supposed to go. You know how that journey is designed. And so you have these biases built in that really, and there's been studies on this, you can't eliminate those biases. And so it's so important. I would say the one piece of advice I always give to people about journey mapping is no matter what you do, ensure you get authentic patients. And I sometimes even say I love, patient and family advisory boards. They're a great tool for organizations. But I would always say, let's even not go to them. They're going to have their biases because they've been sharing their input with you for years or months or whatever it might be. Uh, let's talk to patients who've received care recently. Let's get their authentic perspectives, and that will help us really understand where can we, to your point earlier, Colin, where can we pinpoint the best opportunity for us to improve our experience or really enhance our experience.
So, Jim, Steve, how does one go about picking which journey to start with? I mean, there are lots of patient journeys. I'm sure the mapping exercise could seem overwhelming if you try to tackle it all at once. Do you pick a service line? Do you pick a type of patient? What's sort of the best way to approach building your first patient journey map?
So, Steve, I'll just start with sort of how it's fit into both the MedStar environment as well as the Maryland environment. Um, at MedStar Health, it was really a focus on entry points into the system, right? So we had a strong strategy around bringing folks into the system, giving them a phenomenal experience, and then once they were our patients, and we provided them a great experience, that allowed us the equity to be able to drive referrals to specialists as they might need, right? So that was, and we wanted to make sure that experience was really buttoned up in order to facilitate that transfer or the continuation of care. In Maryland, we really are looking at a business case where we're in a very competitive market, and we're one of two academic medical centers, not even just in the state, but in the same city. And that really is a tough place to be, and you really have to be able to deliver on people's expectations in order to be successful in the market. So we said we wanted to pursue these services, these specialties or disease sites that we were going after. Uh, and in order to do that, we knew we had to figure out how do we create an optimal experience in order to be, the preferred provider in the market. So it aligns with
Yeah,
it really aligns with a business strategy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And that's what we often see as well, is that what's our strategic objective right now? And sometimes it's that, how are we acquiring patients? Sometimes it's specific areas around service lines, whether it's cancer or it could be other service lines that maybe we're seeing some trends around that we want to impact. Other times we might look at just an overall journey. Let's think about some of the key elements that are common across our organization: making appointments, finding where I need to go, post visit instructions, What's the referral process like, et cetera. So we could design these in a lot of different ways depending on the needs. But I think that's, call it, if I were to say, okay, well, where do I start? Maybe start at those entry points because we know how important those are. And then those secondary points, the post referral process, those are other areas to focus on. But yeah, you do need to make sure that you're setting boundaries and parameters in terms of the information we want to get. Because if we go too wide, then we're not going to be able to go deep enough. And that's how we often counsel our clients. It's let's really think about what we're trying to achieve here, and then design this in a way that we can get the most impactful insights to really make a difference and have a business impact.
So at the end of a journey mapping process, what is it that I should be ending up with? What does it look like? What does it feel like?
So much information. It's a gosh, what is that, like a 4x6 board, Steve, that I have?
Yeah.
This is, yeah, I mean, it's an enormous amount of information in a graphic layout, and it really gives you all the insights that you could possibly need for this type of to improve your experience. What the key milestones were, how well we delivered in terms of against expectations, the emotional state of the patient, the pain points, right? And I think that for me is the most important piece is when you see these pain points that our patients articulate, that gives us the direction to say, okay, let's focus on these areas to really improve the experience, to really deliver what our patients need at these most vulnerable times.
Yeah, I would say, the big benefit is you have this journey map that becomes this artifact, and as Jim says, goes up on the wall and you can look at it, which I think it makes it more powerful than a PowerPoint deck that might get, stuck in a folder someplace. Now there is a companion PowerPoint deck, so you have that if you need it, but that artifact makes it really powerful to see those things. And then what we really focus on too is what are the defining moments? What are the moments that are most important if we distill this down to, somewhere between 5 and 7 moments in the experience? And those are the areas we could focus on. And then oftentimes what we'll do is let's solution around those. And sometimes it's most impactful to co-create solutions to those with patients. So we might have a process of using design thinking to bring patients back in along with staff and co-create new solutions around those. So that's one area it goes into, but it can also that journey map gives you an idea of where we can prioritize and sets that roadmap for us and how we can really track that journey and how we want to improve it.
Just building on that point, I mentioned the pain points, and I want to underscore what Steve was saying, because when the priority areas aren't just the areas that you have the deficiencies. Certainly you'll find value in that information and those insights, and you want to address those. But there are also opportunities that where you have peaks in the journey, and you really want to leverage those to accentuate, right? You want to accentuate these positive moments, and you can do that through communications, because sometimes it's not just an experience. The experience transcends into what might be a marketing campaign where you start talking about the experience you provide in a different way, because that this now resonates with patients. So it's an important piece that you're going to get highs and lows, and both of those represent opportunities.
Thank you for pointing that out, because I was just about to ask that. Both of you, can you give me a tangible example of a piece of information you found out by doing the mapping that was a pleasant surprise for you?
Sure. As an academic medical center, University of Maryland Medical Center focuses on really a lot of the achievements of academic medicine, right? So clinical breakthroughs, first and onlys, achievements and that and the like, clinical trials, et cetera. And that's all very, very appropriate for the product that we have, the institution that we are. Now, what was interesting, though, is that when people went through the journey, we kept hearing that everybody was delivering on this idea of compassionate care. So every person that the patient interacted with was, genuinely interested in the well-being of that patient, whether it's the parking attendant all the way to, the last person you see as you walk out the building. So, for us, that gave us license to create more of a holistic message around our healthcare offering, right? So it's not just we're excellent in medicine, we're excellent in medicine and we're excellent at caring for you. I'm not the copywriter, but that's the idea. So it was a real pleasant surprise for me because I think it's that emotional connection that makes the difference, right? Because I think a lot of times healthcare consumers, they look at academic medicine and they expect you to be the greatest in, the latest and the most advanced. And maybe they don't expect this heartwarming care that they receive in my organization from the beginning to the end. That was a nice surprise.
Yeah, and I'll just build on that. Connected to it, but was also maybe not a surprise, but great to see was the work of the nurse navigator and how important that was for patients undergoing cancer care. Because we know how vulnerable you can be and how challenging it is when you get a diagnosis like that. And we knew the navigator is important, but it really, really shone through and very much related to that compassionate care idea as well.
Final question for the both of you. What would you say to someone who is trying to convince their executives to go ahead and start on a journey map? So the person is convinced that it's a good thing, but maybe they need some help convincing their senior leaders that this is something worthwhile investing in. What would you say to someone like that? What advice would you give them to get them over that hump?
So for me, it's a lot of what we've talked about in this conversation. What they're going to get out of this, what insights they're going to get out of this work is going to be unlike anything else that they have. Everything else is all the other methodologies that we have in healthcare are very rigid. The CAP surveys, and you can get verbatims out of CAP surveys, but that's about a specific incident or a specific moment in that journey. This is a way to be differentiated in a market in terms of how we deliver against our customers' expectations and define our brand. It is, to me, an invaluable exercise to be able to craft an experience that touches people in the way that we want them to be felt.
And I would add to that, there's in healthcare we're very collaborative, right? There's at conferences, there's different roundtables, and so there's a lot of opportunity to meet with peers. And I would say seek out those peers that could share their experiences, because that's always impactful to a person like Jim who's gone through it, to share their experiences and what was impactful for their senior leadership. And then the other element, and this is a common piece of advice, would start small. Like just the impact of talking to a handful of patients about a certain issue and putting those insights together can show you the power of listening to our patients and understanding their perspective. And then you imagine, okay, what does it look like if we scale this to the full journey? And so that's another way to do it as well, is to really think about just the voice of the patient can really open up things for people once they really start to hear it and think about the insights they can get that goes so far beyond what they may have today.
Jim, final question for you. Where can people go to learn more about the University of Maryland?
We have quite a few websites, but the system is umms.org, and then the hospital that I'm at specifically is umm.edu.
Awesome. And Steve, where can people go to connect with you and with Cast Hue?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Colin. Castandhue.com is our website, so please visit us there. But I'm also on LinkedIn often, and so you could find me there as well to connect. Always happy to chat journey mapping and anything else around healthcare experience.
Well, lovely to have you both on the program today. I really enjoyed today's conversation. I think you opened up a lot of people's eyes on the value of journey maps.
Thank you, Colin. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Colin.
What were my big takeaways from that discussion? Well, I learned that journey maps make the invisible visible. They reveal how small details can have a big impact, like confusing parking signs or a missed follow-up call. What impressed me was how the maps helped Jim and his team focus their resources where it mattered most, and how they got patients involved right from the very beginning. Be sure to subscribe for more great patient experience conversations like this one. Plus, help us out by giving this video a like. I'm Colin Hung. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.